You got into business school. Oh my God. First of all, congratulations. It is so hard to get into business school. You took the GMAT or the GRE. You asked some people for your recommendations. You wrote a bunch of essays. You did a lot over the past year to get into business school and it paid off. So congratulations. Now what? You actually have to make a decision about where to go to school. It's rough. There are so many options. You got into more than one school and now you have to make a decision about what to actually do. I've been there and I have a few tips for what to think about as you go through this journey. There is no one right answer for everyone. You could get into the same exact schools as someone else and choose a different school because that is what works best for you and your situation. We're gonna talk a little bit about what it's like to get into a bunch of schools, what are the factors that you could consider when deciding which school that you actually wanna go to. So keep watching for a few tips. There are 5 main factors that I thought about when I was thinking about which school that I wanted to go to. 1, how much is it gonna cost? 2, where is the school located? Is it in a place where I wanna live for 2 years? And is it in a place where it'll be easy for me to find the job that I want to go to? 3, what were the clubs that I could be a part of at the school? Was there stuff that I like to do and could I do it and have a lot of fun? 4, what are the job prospects at the school? What do most people from the school go on to do afterward? What are the percentages of that? Would it be easy for me to do the same thing? That was something that was really on my mind. And obviously 5, what was the network of the school? You will hear that word 1,000 times when you're looking at business schools. People will talk about the network of the school. And so finally I had gotten to a bunch of schools and wanted to think about what was the network that the school would actually give me. Deep diving on all those topics now, starting with money and scholarships. How much is school actually going to cost? That's something that's actually a little bit hard to tell because you have to look at what the tuition is, then what room and board is of the school, and you can look that up all on the school website. It's pretty easy to find that information. The school is going to give you a sense of what the room and board is, but chances are you might end up spending a little bit more money than that. There are dinners that you might want to go to, trips that the school hosts that you might want to go to. There are trips that your classmates will host that you might want to go to. One piece of advice that I got when I was looking at schools was that the difference between having an amazing time and having a just normal time is about $20,000, which is a lot of money, but the person was saying that $20,000 in the grand scheme of things is not a huge deal, especially if you take out loans, because it's just gonna be added to your monthly bill and it's just not gonna be that much money. That was something I took into consideration and I added $20,000 to every number that I saw from schools for how much I actually thought I would pay. Now, you might have actually gotten a scholarship from some schools, which is amazing. Some schools give tuition scholarships based on merit, meaning I think that you provide something really extra and special to the school, they will offer you a scholarship. Other schools will give you money based on how much money you have, if that makes sense. So if in your savings and with all the money that you have, you can comfortably afford school, you will not receive financial aid from the school. However, if your savings and your money that you made from before school prove that you would need help affording school, then the school will give you money to help attend. From what I understand, Harvard and Stanford are the 2 schools that have the need blind policy, as in they'll let you into the school and then they will give you financial aid based on how much money you made previously, whereas all other schools I know of give money based on merit. All of that said, if you get into a school and they don't give you money, it doesn't mean that they don't actually want you to come. I think the majority of students don't get merit tuition scholarships, so it's not like you should feel bad if you don't get a tuition scholarship at all. It's just explaining how that process works. Let's say you've gotten into schools where some of them have given you money and some of them haven't. You have to decide for yourself, is that the most important factor for you and why? Now, could you afford to go to a school that is more expensive and take out loans? Yes. Will it give you different opportunities in terms of the location, in terms of the job prospects, in terms of the network, all the things that we're gonna talk about next? If it doesn't, then maybe it's not actually worth it to pay that much more money to go to the school. However, if it gives you a bunch of other options that you wouldn't get at the school that's giving you a full tuition scholarship, then it could be worth it to consider that school, even if it's much more expensive. Thinking about the cost does take a little bit of time, and you might have to create a spreadsheet, you might have to do some quick math, but that extra time that you spend thinking about that will make it so much more worth it. I recommend thinking about how much every school is gonna cost. Location. Where the school is and is not important at the same time. Wherever you go to school, you know that you can get a job by hopping on a plane and going on an interview, by talking to people online. Listen, we just lived in a crazy panoramic that is almost done, but not quite. And we have all seen the power of the internet in order to do work and to apply to jobs and to talk to people who are not even remotely in the same region as you. However, I will say that in some cases, your school being in a specific place can be very, very helpful. I know from my friends who went to school in New York and in Pennsylvania, it was so much easier for them to apply to a job in New York City than for my friends who went to Stanford with me or who were generally on the West Coast. Why is that? In normal, Panasonic times, what you do is you interview in person. So for example, if you are trying to interview for a job that's based in New York and you go to school in California, you can have your first phone call wherever, but for the final interviews, you are going to need to go to that office in person and interview with the partners or interview with the manager, whoever that is, live. So if you live in New York or you live in Boston or Philadelphia or DC, a quick train ride away, that trip to New York is so much less taxing on you. All you have to do is get on a bus or maybe a car with your friends or the quick Acela train, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, and you're in New York, bam, it might even just take you one day to get there. You know, if you've done this, going from the West Coast to the East Coast in general is so annoying. You lose so much time. And so the best option to not lose your entire day is to go at night and take a red eye, but then you've slept for like 6 hours on a plane. That's not the best place to sleep. You're kind of groggy. You get to New York City or the East Coast at, I don't know, 7 a.m. and then your interview is at 9 and somehow you have to like look good and prepared and you just got off of a plane. Rough. Or you leave the day before and you leave maybe on an afternoon flight and then you don't get into the East Coast until nighttime. And then you've lost your whole day. You probably had to miss classes in order to do that. And it's just like a really annoying experience. It's obviously very doable. There are plenty of people who go to school on the West Coast and work on the East Coast afterward and vice versa, or even people who are in the Midwest and go to any of the coasts and of course vice versa. So it's not saying it's not possible. It is just saying there are definitely cons to doing that. That is maybe not the most important thing, but definitely something to take into account in terms of location. Based on industry you might be interested in, location can also be really fun and important. For example, being at Stanford, located in Silicon Valley, so many of our professors were investors. It was also really easy to visit companies. So every business school has a track. There's like an entertainment track or a consulting track. Being interested in tech was awesome to be on the West Coast because you're just so close to all the tech companies. You can easily take a day trip up to Washington and visit Microsoft. You can take a day trip down to Los Angeles and visit Snap. Like, it's just so easy to do. For that reason, location can also be super important for deciding where you want to go to school. 3, what are the extracurricular activities at the school? Extracurriculars in business school are not the same as an undergrad where you're trying to do extracurriculars and like be president to put on your resume so that you get a job in the future. There are very rare circumstances where what you do as an extracurricular is gonna be the reason that you got a job. It doesn't mean that it's impossible, it's just a different focus than it was in undergrad. So what I found was that being in extracurricular activities was super fun because I got to meet other people who had the same interests as I did and learn from people who came from different industries who were also interested in that same thing. I was in the Arts, Media, and Entertainment Club, I was in the Venture Capital Club, I was in the Food Club and got to learn all about how people cook, but I'm not a great cook, so I just also went to their parties and ate all their food. So all of the clubs run the gamut of how invested you actually need to be in them. But if you're interested in something really niche, it could be nice to go to a school that has a club that's about that thing. That way you can invite speakers through that club. You can email people saying that you're part of that club. It can just give you a little bit more clout, I guess, if that's the right word, when you are trying to reach out to someone and tell them that you're interested in a specific thing, if that is an extracurricular activity. So it's good for networking, but also just as an interest. If you want to do something and you would love to have a group of people that also want to do that thing, look and see if that club exists at the school. If the club doesn't exist, most schools allow you to create clubs. There's also situations where you can just create like an informal group of people who want to do that thing. So it's not like a deal breaker if the school doesn't have a club that is of your specific interest. However, I do think it is a marker of what are people interested in at the school, what have they been interested in the past, and will you find other people who like that thing too? Next, we have to talk about jobs and about potential salaries. It is so important the type of job that you believe that you can have after going to business school and the salary that you can attain based on the fact that you are paying so much money to go to that school. It is an investment, so that investment needs to work for you, and the easiest way, or the first way that that investment pays off monetarily, is through the job that you get after school. Of all the schools that you got into, which are the schools, or which is the one school that you are most likely to get the job of your dreams? Sometimes it's equal across schools. For example, let's say that I wanted to be a consultant, which actually was the job I thought I was gonna have when I first went to business school, because I loved the idea of being a consultant, and I applied to consulting jobs, and I actually had a really good time doing that. Every single school has consultants. Every single school sends a large percentage of their class to consulting firms. And that is just true across business school because it's such a great job, it's really well paying, and consulting firms are heavily recruiting at every single business school. So if you want to be a consultant, chances are that across schools, there's not going to be a huge difference between how many people get consulting offers. The difference could be in what firm people get consulting offers and in what location. So if you go to school in Chicago, the competition to be a consultant in Chicago might be fiercer than if you go to school in New York or in the South and you want to work in Chicago, then the people who are applying to Chicago firms from your school is likely to be lower. People are mostly gonna stay in the same region as their school for the first few years after school. For certain jobs, especially for jobs where they're big firms and recruiters are gonna come to your school to recruit, that happens across a lot of different schools. Now, if you're interested in CPG, that is a huge industry in the Midwest. There are very likely to be more CPG companies recruiting at Midwestern schools than there are at schools on the coast. There are way more likely to be more venture capital recruiting or info sessions at schools on the West Coast and specifically in Silicon Valley than there are really anywhere else. But that doesn't mean that there are none. It just means that your chance to meet people who are in that specific industry that's mostly located in a region changes based on where the school is. So the job prospects point is, I think, really tied into the location point. It's not exactly the same, but they are correlated. With job prospects comes salary. I think most schools actually publish this information of what percentage of people from the class had a job within, I think, 6 months after graduation, and then breakdown of what industry those people were in. And I think that it also includes salaries. What you can do is go to every school and make a list and see, based on what you want to do, how many people percentage-wise from each school did that thing or were in that industry. That's super easy to find out. And if you can't find it on the website, you can certainly call the admissions office and ask for access to that information. They would be happy to give it to you. If you see that the job that you want is not necessarily something that one of the schools you got into does, you can ask to talk to someone who did what you want to do, even if it's not popular, and ask them how easy or hard it was for them to get that. That way you can actually have a sense of what it would be like to go to that school and to try to get that job. And last but certainly not least, network. Okay, I told you this word comes up literally all the time, especially for business school. Who are the people that you are going to be associated with literally for the rest of your life? The people who are in your actual class at that school, but also who are you gonna be able to reach out to when you have a question and you wanna talk to someone who graduated 10 years ago? Is that person going to be responsive? Are they likely to even grab coffee with you if that is something you're interested in? Are they likely to try to get you a job? Every school has, I think, a different reputation for how involved and how responsive their alumni are, and also how easy it is to reach out to them. So definitely do some research on that front to see if it would be helpful. And where does your network work? Where do they live? What do they do? Those questions are also really important, because if you want to do something similar and you have people in that network and they'll respond if they see the name of the school in the subject of the email that you write, you are golden, and you will have lots of advice and help from people literally for the rest of your life based on the fact that you went to that school. When we talk about how much it costs to go to that school, I mentioned before, that investment first starts paying off when you get that first job after school, but it is something that should keep on giving for the rest of your life with the people that you're able to meet and with the potential job connections that you're able to make, because you have that on your resume and because you have that shared experience and know similar people. Based on all of those criteria, what was my experience? As you guys know, or if you don't, I went to Stanford Business School. I graduated in 2020. I applied to 6 business schools and I was accepted into 5. Of the schools that I got into, Stanford was need-based, I didn't get anywhere near as much money, to be perfectly honest. What was really important for me was looking through those criteria and deciding what I wanted. In terms of money, Stanford was the clear loser. It was going to cost way more money to go to Stanford than any other school. And for me, the other 4 parts were incredibly important. So the location, it was the only school that I was admitted to that was on the West Coast. And I just thought being on the West Coast would make such a difference for what I wanted to do in tech and what I wanted to do in media. In terms of extracurriculars at the school, I just thought that they would be really great. What I wanted to do was like media and entertainment, which there is a media and entertainment club at every school. That was not unique to Stanford. What was unique in terms of like extracurriculars and classes, which I didn't mention at the beginning, but that's also important. I think it kind of goes all together. Stanford is known for its sort of touchy-feely course things and also really preparing different like leadership styles and giving people leadership skills. All business schools do this, but I thought that the way that Stanford did it was really unique, and I just loved the hands-on approach to learning that Stanford had that was, I think, different from some other schools. I just thought I would learn a lot more in that sort of real life class environment than I would if I was learning it more in theory, or if I could only do it for 3 months versus for a year. So I really thought that Stanford's extracurriculars and classes would be really different and a huge boon for me. In terms of job prospects, I thought I wanted to be a consultant. So it honestly didn't really matter which of the schools that I went to. I could definitely be a consultant at the firm I wanted to be at, in the city I probably wanted to be at any of the schools I had gotten into. So that was honestly much less of a concern for me than I think it was for maybe other people, or than it could potentially be for you. But what I will say is that I did not know that my job at Netflix existed when I applied to business school. I also think if I hadn't gone to Stanford, I might not have applied to my job at Netflix. Actually going to Stanford and knowing that I wanted to be in a place that was really innovative and had tech and media, that made a difference for me in a way that I couldn't have even known when I first started school. So I feel really grateful about that. And lastly, network. Most schools are gonna be amazing. You're gonna have alumni who have done incredible things, but I felt like what the difference was for me was that Stanford was a smaller school, and so my impression from talking to a lot of people was that anyone you emailed was much more likely to get back to you because it was a smaller school with a smaller feel. People felt much more connected to each other while they were at school, and so felt even more compelled to give back when people reached out to them. And that was something that I thought would make a difference for me, and honestly has with some of the people that I've met, have been able to interview, have been able to chat with, and get honestly like life advice from and advice in the world of media and entertainment as an MBA. So that has definitely worked out. I think something else to note, and that I haven't mentioned that people are gonna ask about, is like, you just went there because it was ranked highest. Rankings are not important. But the reason that it wasn't in my list was because I didn't want rankings to be the most important thing to me when I was going through my list. Just because something is ranked really high doesn't mean that it's the best for you. It could be ranked really high because people get really high salaries because they work in private equity afterward, but like, I'm not gonna work in private equity. That doesn't actually matter to me. What mattered to me really was the 5 things I mentioned. I hope that this was really helpful to you as you decide where to go. Once again, congratulations. Take a deep breath. You did everything that you needed to do in order to get into school. Choosing the school that you want is honestly the easy part of everything that you've done over the past year. And here's the secret. There's no really bad choice. Every school will give you a different experience, but nothing will be horrendous, right? So you can't really mess it up all the way, which is freeing. Leave a comment below if you have any more questions about how to decide. I'm happy to answer. Lots more business school content coming out in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. Leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. Bye.